Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stacked the last box of engine parts in the garage. The auto repair shop had been busier than usual, and his back ached from lifting heavy equipment all day. He glanced at his watch and cursed under his breath. Sarah was late again. This had become a pattern over the past few months. She would disappear for days without explanation, come home exhausted and distracted, then leave again just as mysteriously. Marcus had tried to be understanding at first. Maybe she was dealing with family issues or work stress. But his patience was wearing thin. The bell above the garage door chimed, and Sarah walked in wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. Even from across the shop, Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders and the way she favored her left leg slightly as she walked. "Where have you been?" Marcus called out, not bothering to hide the irritation in his voice. "You said you'd be here at 6 to help me close up. It's almost 8. Sarah didn't answer immediately. She pulled off her sunglasses and rubbed her temples. Marcus noticed dark circles under her eyes and what looked like a small cut on her cheek that hadn't been there 3 days ago. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I got held up." "Held up with what, Sarah?" Marcus slammed down his wrench harder than necessary. "You're always getting held up. You disappear for days, you won't tell me where you go, and when you do come back, you look like you haven't slept in a week." Sarah sat down heavily on a nearby stool, wincing slightly. "It's complicated, Marcus. I can't really explain right now." "Can't or won't?" Marcus's voice rose. "Because there's a difference. We've been together for 2 years, Sarah. 2 years. And I feel like I don't know you at all anymore." She looked up at him with those green eyes that had captivated him when they first met at the coffee shop downtown. But now they held something he couldn't read. Secrets. Walls he couldn't break through. "You do know me," she said softly. "This other stuff, it's just work. What kind of work requires you to disappear without a word? What kind of work leaves you looking like you've been in a fight?" Marcus gestured at the cut on her face. Sarah's hand automatically went to her cheek, and she looked away. "I told you I work in security consulting. Sometimes the job requires travel on short notice." "Security consulting," Marcus repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Right. And I suppose security consultants regularly come home with mysterious injuries and can't tell their boyfriends where they've been." "Marcus, please." Sarah's voice had an edge to it now. "I'm tired. Can we just go home?" But Marcus was beyond reasoning. Months of frustration and confusion boiled over. All the lonely nights wondering where she was, all the half-answered questions and vague explanations, all the times he'd felt like he was dating a ghost. "No, we can't just go home," he snapped. "I'm tired of this, Sarah. I'm tired of feeling like I'm in a relationship with someone who doesn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. What are you hiding? Are you seeing someone else? Are you involved in something illegal?" Sarah stood up abruptly, her jaw tightening. "Is that really what you think of me?" "I don't know what to think anymore." Marcus threw his hands up in frustration. "You won't give me anything to work with? You act like you're living some kind of double life." "Maybe I am," Sarah said quietly, and something in her tone made Marcus pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah picked up her purse and headed for the door. "It means maybe you're right. Maybe you don't know me at all." Marcus followed her, his anger still burning. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away? Again? What do you want from me, Marcus?" Sarah spun around to face him, and for the first time, he saw real emotion crack through her controlled exterior. "You want me to spill my entire life story? You want me to explain every scar, every absence, every time I can't be the perfect girlfriend you want me to be?" "I want honesty," Marcus shouted. "I want to know who I'm sharing my life with. I want to know why the woman I love acts like she's constantly looking over her shoulder." Sarah's expression softened for a moment at the word love, but then the walls went back up. Some things are better left unknown, Marcus. That's not your choice to make, he shot back. If we're going to be together, we need to be honest with each other, all the way honest. And if I can't give you that? Marcus felt his heart breaking even as his anger raged. Then maybe we don't have anything left to talk about. They stood there in the doorway of the garage, the evening air heavy between them. Cars drove past on the street, their headlights cutting through the growing darkness. Normal people living normal lives, Marcus thought bitterly, something he apparently would never have with Sarah. Fine, Sarah said finally. Maybe we don't. She turned and walked toward her car, a nondescript sedan that Marcus had always found oddly practical for someone who supposedly worked in an office. As she reached for the door handle, Marcus called after her. Sarah, wait. She paused but didn't turn around. I love you, he said, the words coming out rougher than he intended. But I can't keep living like this. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of, we can work through it. But only if you let me in. Sarah's shoulders sagged slightly. Some doors can't be unopened, Marcus. Some secrets are kept for good reasons. What could possibly be that bad? She looked back at him then, and for just a moment, he saw something that looked like pain flash across her face. You'd be surprised. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her entire demeanor changed. The weariness disappeared, replaced by sharp focus and tension. I have to go, she said, already moving toward her car. Sarah, wait. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But I have to go now. She was in her car and driving away before he could say another word, leaving him standing alone in the parking lot with more questions than ever and the sinking feeling that he had just lost the most important person in his life. Marcus walked back into the garage and sat down heavily on the same stool Sarah had occupied minutes before. He buried his face in his hands, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had he pushed too hard? Should he have been more patient? But even as he questioned himself, he knew he'd been right to demand answers. A relationship couldn't survive on secrets and half-truths. If Sarah couldn't trust him with whatever she was hiding, then maybe they really didn't have a future together. He pulled out his phone and stared at her contact information, his thumb hovering over the call button. But what would he say? The same arguments they'd been having for months. The same pleas for honesty that fell on deaf ears? Instead, he scrolled through their old text messages. Normal conversations about dinner plans and weekend activities, mixed with her increasingly frequent apologies for canceled dates and missed calls. When had it all started to fall apart? His phone buzzed with a new message from his sister, Lisa. How's Sarah? You two still coming to dinner Sunday? Marcus stared at the message for a long time before typing back, I'm not sure. As he locked up the garage and headed home to his empty apartment, Marcus tried to imagine a life without Sarah in it. No more wondering where she was or when she'd come back. No more feeling like he was competing with shadows for her attention. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like the end of everything that mattered. 3 days passed without a word from Sarah. Marcus threw himself into work, staying late at the garage and taking on extra projects to keep his mind occupied. But every time the door chimed, his heart jumped, hoping it might be her walking through. It never was. On Thursday evening, as Marcus was closing up shop, his phone rang. For a split second, he thought it might be Sarah calling to explain everything, to apologize, to come back. Instead, it was his sister, Lisa. Hey, big brother, she said, her voice unusually serious. Are you watching the news? No, why? Marcus wiped his hands on a shop rag and reached for the remote to the small TV mounted in the corner of the garage. There's something about a terrorist attack that was stopped overseas, some kind of special operations thing. The footage is pretty intense. Marcus flipped through channels until he found a news station. The reporter was standing in front of what looked like a government building, speaking in urgent tones about a thwarted attack on an American embassy. Details are still emerging, the reporter said, but sources confirm that an elite team of Navy SEALs successfully prevented what could have been a catastrophic terrorist attack. The operation, carried out over the past 72 hours, resulted in the capture of several high-value targets and the recovery of explosive materials. Marcus's attention drifted as the reporter continued with technical details about international cooperation and counter-terrorism efforts. This was exactly the kind of thing that made him grateful for his simple life, fixing cars and staying out of world politics. The Pentagon has not released the names of the personnel involved, citing operational security, the reporter continued. However, we can confirm that several team members sustained minor injuries during the mission. Pretty crazy stuff, Lisa was saying on the phone. Makes you realize how much is happening that we never hear about. Yeah, Marcus agreed absently, about to change the channel when something caught his eye. The news had switched to shaky cell phone footage from someone who had been near the embassy when the operation went down. The quality was poor, but it showed figures in tactical gear moving with precise coordination. One of them limped slightly as they moved toward an extraction vehicle. Marcus's heart stopped. He knew that limp. He'd seen it just 3 days ago when Sarah walked into his garage. "Lisa, I have to go," he said, hanging up without explanation. He rewound the footage and watched it again, studying every detail. The person's height, the way they moved, even their posture looked familiar. But that was impossible. Sarah worked in security consulting. She'd said so herself. She wasn't military. She definitely wasn't a Navy SEAL. Was she? Marcus spent the next hour glued to the television, watching every news report about the operation. Most of the details were classified, but gradually a picture emerged of a highly complex mission that had required months of planning and surveillance, the kind of operation that would require team members to maintain deep cover identities, the kind of operation that might require someone to disappear for days at a time without explanation. His mind raced back through all the strange details he'd noticed, but dismissed. Sarah's unusual physical fitness. She could run for miles without getting winded and had reflexes that seemed almost supernatural. The scars he'd glimpsed on her shoulders and back when she thought he wasn't looking. The way she sometimes seemed to scan every room she entered, noting exits and potential threats. And then there were the smaller things. How she never talked about her childhood or her family. How she paid for everything in cash. How her apartment contained almost no personal items or photographs. How she sometimes woke up in the middle of the night, instantly alert, as if responding to sounds only she could hear. Marcus had attributed all of it to quirks, or maybe a difficult past. He'd never imagined it might be because she was living a completely different life than the one she'd shown him. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. "Marcus, this is Sarah. I can't use my regular phone right now. I know you have questions. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone, please." Marcus stared at the message, his hands trembling slightly. A dozen thoughts crashed through his mind at once. Was she in danger? Was he? Why couldn't she use her regular phone? And why did the timing of her message coincide so perfectly with news of a Navy SEAL operation? He tried calling the number, but it went straight to a voicemail box that wasn't set up. He texted back, "Are you okay?" But there was no response. That night, Marcus barely slept. He lay in bed, replaying every moment of their relationship, looking for clues he'd missed. The time she'd insisted on driving when they went out of town, always choosing routes that avoided certain areas. How she'd never wanted him to pick her up at work, always meeting him at restaurants or his place instead. The way she'd sometimes received phone calls that made her go pale and excuse herself for private conversations. Had any of it been real? Had she ever truly cared about him? Or was their entire relationship just part of some elaborate cover story? By the time morning came, Marcus was exhausted and more confused than ever. He went through the motions at work, but his mind was elsewhere. His employees noticed his distraction and kept asking if he was feeling all right. "Just didn't sleep well," he told them, which was true enough. The day crawled by. Marcus found himself constantly checking his phone for new messages, but none came. As evening approached, his anxiety grew. What if this was some kind of trap? What if Sarah was in trouble and meeting him would put them both in danger? But despite all his doubts and fears, one thing was certain. He needed answers. At 7:45 p.m., Marcus parked his truck near Riverside Park and walked toward the meeting spot. The park was nearly empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers. He chose a bench near the river where he could see anyone approaching from multiple directions. A precaution that felt both paranoid and necessary. At exactly 8 p.m., Sarah emerged from a grove of trees to his left. She was dressed in jeans and a dark jacket, with her hair pulled back and no makeup. Without the polished appearance she usually maintained, she looked younger and somehow more real. She also looked exhausted. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting down on the far end of the bench, maintaining distance between them. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked. It was the first thing that came out of his mouth, surprising them both. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I'm fine. A few bruises, nothing serious." "I saw the news," Marcus said quietly. "About the embassy." Sarah went very still. "What about it?" "I think I saw you. In the footage." For a long moment they sat in silence, the sound of the river flowing past them in the darkness. Finally, Sarah spoke. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Marcus said. "I want to know who you really are." Sarah looked out at the water, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My name is Sarah Michelle Rodriguez. I'm a petty officer first class in the United States Navy. I've been a Navy SEAL for 8 years. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, even though part of him had been expecting them. 8 years, he repeated. "How long have we been together?" 2 years. "So our entire relationship has been built on lies," Sarah finished. "At least partly." Marcus felt anger rising again, but underneath it was something else, hurt, betrayal. "Why?" "Because that's what the job requires," Sarah said. "Deep cover assignments can last for years. We build entire identities, complete lives that can't be traced back to our real work. And I was what? Part of your cover story?" Sarah turned to look at him then, and he saw tears in her eyes. "At first, yes. I was supposed to be a security consultant who'd moved to town for a fresh start. Having a stable relationship with a local business owner made the story more believable." "At first," Marcus repeated. "What changed?" "You did," Sarah said simply. "You changed everything." Sarah's words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. Marcus felt his anger warring with relief, confusion mixing with hope. "What do you mean I changed everything?" he asked. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so vulnerable it broke something inside Marcus's chest. "I mean that somewhere along the way, this stopped being an assignment and started being my life, the real one." "But you kept lying to me." "I kept protecting you," Sarah corrected. "Do you have any idea what would happen if the wrong people knew about you? If they found out that Navy SEAL Sarah Rodriguez had a civilian boyfriend they could use as leverage?" Marcus hadn't considered that angle. In his hurt and frustration, he'd only thought about his own need for honesty. "So you lied to protect me." "I lied to protect both of us, and I hated every second of it." Sarah's voice cracked. "Do you think I enjoyed watching you doubt yourself? Do you think I liked seeing the hurt in your eyes when I had to cancel another date or disappear without explanation? Then why didn't you just tell me?" "Because I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you." Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the riverbank. "This was supposed to be temporary. A role I played until the mission was over, but you—" She turned back to face him, and Marcus saw years of hidden pain in her expression. "You made me want things I'd never wanted before. A normal life. Sunday morning pancakes and arguments about whose turn it is to take out the trash. A future that didn't involve constantly looking over my shoulder or wondering if this mission might be my last." Marcus stood and took a tentative step toward her. "Sarah. My real name is Sarah Elena Vasquez," she continued, as if the words were being torn from her. "I grew up in San Diego. My father was a Marine who died in Afghanistan when I was 16. My mother remarried a man who spent more time drunk than sober. I joined the Navy to get away from him and found my calling with the SEALs." She was talking faster now, as if afraid she'd lose her nerve. "I've been on 47 classified missions across 6 continents. I speak 4 languages fluently and can kill someone with my bare hands in 12 different ways. I've been shot twice, stabbed once, and had my cover blown so badly I spent 3 weeks in a Pakistani prison before my team could extract me." Marcus listened, trying to reconcile this warrior with the woman who cried during romantic movies and always insisted on splitting the check at restaurants. "I've never had a relationship that lasted longer than a few months because the job always came first. Always. Until I met you." "What was different about me?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah smiled sadly. "You saw me. Not the cover identity I'd constructed, but somehow you saw the real me underneath all the lies. When you looked at me, I felt like I could be Sarah the person instead of Sarah the weapon. You are a person, Sarah. You always were." "Not according to my commanding officers. The mission in Syria was supposed to be my last deep cover assignment. I was going to request a transfer to training new recruits. I was going to tell you the truth and see if we could build something real together. What happened? The mission went sideways. What was supposed to be a simple intelligence gathering operation turned into a 3-day running firefight. We lost 2 team members." Sarah's voice became flat, clinical. "Command decided I was too valuable in the field to waste on training assignments." Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "So they ordered you back. The embassy operation was classified as critical national security. I had 72 hours notice before deployment. I couldn't tell you where I was going or why. I couldn't even be sure I was coming back. Is that why you pulled away? Why you seemed so distant the last few months?" "I was trying to protect you from this conversation," Sarah admitted. "I thought if I made you angry enough, if I made you want to leave, it would hurt less for both of us when I had to disappear forever." Marcus shook his head. "That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. "Yeah, well, I'm better at tactical operations than relationship management." They stood there in the growing darkness, the weight of 2 years of secrets finally out in the open between them. Marcus tried to process everything he'd learned, but one question kept circling back to the front of his mind. What happens now? Sarah's smile faded. "Now I have 48 hours of leave before I report for my next assignment. After that," she shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe more deep cover work, maybe overseas deployment, maybe something I can't come back from." "And us?" "There is no us, Marcus. There can't be. Not with the life I lead." "Says who?" "Says reality. Says a dozen different military protocols. Says common sense." Marcus stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "What does your heart say?" Sarah looked away. "My heart doesn't get a vote in this." "Maybe it should." "Marcus, you don't understand. The people I work against, the missions I'm involved in, they're not like anything in your world. If they ever connected you to me, they wouldn't hesitate to use you to get to me. Or to hurt you just to send a message. So we figure it out. We take precautions. We what? Live a life where I disappear for months at a time with no contact? Where you never know if I'm coming home? Where you have to lie to your sister and your friends about what your girlfriend really does for a living? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her words. She was right about the challenges. The life she'd described wasn't one he'd ever imagined for himself. But as he looked at her standing there in the moonlight, exhausted and vulnerable and more beautiful than he'd ever seen her, Marcus realized something that surprised him. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes. What?" Yes to all of it. The uncertainty, the secrets I'd have to keep, the worry, the long deployments. Yes to building something real even if it's not normal. Yes to loving a Navy SEAL even if I don't completely understand what that means. Sarah stared at him. "Marcus, you're not thinking clearly. I've never been thinking more clearly in my life." He reached out and took her hands, noting the calluses on her palms and the small scars on her knuckles. "Sarah, I fell in love with you not knowing who you really were. Now that I do know, I love you even more. You love the idea of me. This is just—" She gestured between them. "This is adrenaline talking. No, this is me talking. Sarah Elena Vasquez, Navy SEAL, daughter of a Marine, woman who can kill with her bare hands and cries during Disney movies. I love all of it. I love all of you." Tears were flowing freely down Sarah's face now. "It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. I could die on a mission. You could wait for me to come home and I might never make it back. That's true for anyone, in any job. At least this way I'd know I spent whatever time we had with someone extraordinary." Sarah searched his face as if looking for any sign he didn't mean what he was saying. "What about the lies? What about your need for honesty?" "I still need honesty between us," Marcus said. "But I understand now that there are some things you can't tell me for both our safety. I can live with that as long as you promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me that when you can tell me things, you will. Promise me that the person you are with me will always be real, even if everything else has to be a cover story." Sarah was quiet for a long time, and Marcus held his breath, afraid she would say no. Afraid she would walk away and disappear from his life forever. Finally, she spoke. "There's something else you should know." "What?" "My next assignment. It's not overseas. Command is putting together a new domestic counterterrorism unit based here. They want me to head up the team." Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest. "Meaning?" "Meaning I'd be home most nights. Meaning we could try this thing, this relationship, without me disappearing for months at a time. And you want that?" Sarah stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see his reflection in her eyes. "I want that more than I've ever wanted anything in my life." Marcus pulled her into his arms then, and she melted against him with a sigh that seemed to come from her very soul. They held each other beside the river as the city lights twinkled around them. Two people who had found each other against all odds. "I'm sorry I lost my temper with you," Marcus whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry I let you think I didn't trust you," Sarah whispered back. "I do trust you, Marcus. With my life. I love you, Sarah. All of you. The security consultant and the Navy SEAL and whoever else you need to be." "I love you too," she said. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." They pulled apart to look at each other, and Marcus saw something in Sarah's face he'd never seen before. Peace. The walls were finally down, the masks finally off. "So what happens now?" he asked. Sarah smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Now we go home. And tomorrow I start figuring out how to be both Sarah the Navy SEAL and Sarah the girlfriend. It's not going to be easy, but I think it might be the most important mission I've ever been assigned to." Marcus laughed. "I think I can help with that mission." "I was hoping you'd say that." As they walked back toward their cars, hands intertwined, Marcus marveled at how much had changed in the span of a few days. He'd gone from thinking he was dating a mysterious security consultant to discovering he was in love with one of the most elite warriors in the world. The future was still uncertain. There would still be challenges, still be times when duty would call Sarah away from him. But now they would face those challenges together, with honesty and trust and love. And somehow, that made all the difference in the world.